Oh,
There we go. Now you can see that.
I can see that.
Yes.
There's a little, just so you guys know,
We need
there's a
sunglasses.
little switch right there, and you can see the switch. The switch actually lights up too.
Ah, well,
Boy, are we getting
We have a little
sophisticated or
turn
what?
so fancy around here.
Well,
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, January 27th Maplewood City Council meeting. To get started tonight, I thought I would talk about a meeting that Councilmember Neblett and I had with our faith community. We reached out to all of our places of worship in Maplewood, and we asked them to come together to meet with us and to meet with each other, basically. And we talked about, kind of introduced some ideas about the city. We talked about our new Multicultural Advisory Commission. We talked about the census and the role that they could help play in terms of a complete count. We had 24 people who attended our meeting, representing 18 different places of worship in our city. And they thought that it was valuable enough that they want to meet again. Kind of the reason behind this was something that I had seen a while ago. It was a story about Gander, Newfoundland. And Gander, Newfoundland is a stopping point in between the United States and Europe. And when 9/11 occurred and we were attacked, 38 planes had to land. They had to get out of the air, and they were forced to land in Gander, Newfoundland. Now, Gander, Newfoundland is a city of about 8,000, 9,000 people. And immediately they almost doubled their size, and they had to come up with, how do we address this crisis? What do we do for food and for lodging for people for really what was an undetermined period of time? And in Gander, Newfoundland, they called them the plain people, were with them in their houses and in their churches and in their places of worship and in their schools for a period of 5 days. And it was such a profound example of a community coming together through a crisis. As the mayor, I thought about what would we do if we had a crisis. And we certainly have an ongoing relationship with our school district, but I thought that it was important. We have so many partners that we partner with. We partner with other cities, neighboring cities. We partner with the county. We partner with our watershed district. And I thought it was a partnership that had been more or less overlooked. And so Councilmember Neblett and I met with our faith community, and it was a really, I thought, a very excellent meeting. One of the concerns that they raised that we can certainly help them with is they were talking about a concern for security in their buildings. And at our very next meeting, we are going to work with our public safety department and bring in a speaker to speak with them about security at their places of worship. And so it's the start of, I think, a new partnership. And certainly one of the things that we did is we asked for people if there was some event that happened in our city where we needed to call on our community to help and support. And we had a number of people who signed up and were very willing to participate. Councilmember Neblett, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the one thing I want to say is how pleased the people were to meet other faith community members. I think, as generally speaking, you go to your church and you do things in your church, but here was an opportunity for people to actually talk about things that they could do together as a community, as part of our community. It was a very positive and upbeat meeting, and I think people are really excited about the next one and where we go from here.
Thank you. With that, let us all do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk Stitt, would you do our roll call, please?
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Nevlet.
Here.
Councilmember Knutson.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here.
And Councilmember Smith is not joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Council members, the first item on our agenda is the council workshop minutes for our last
No, we have to
workshop.
approve, we haven't approved the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I skipped over that one.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you a
Approval
commissioner?
of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Neblett, seconded by Knutson. Approval of the agenda. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
My light's on.
Oh. Sorry, I couldn't see that.
I have one council presentation. The
is
last
that?
call for recycle your holidays.
All right. Anything else? No further discussion? How, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we can move on to the council workshop minutes for January 13th.
I move approval.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. Motion to approve the January 13th, 2020 City Council workshop minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to the January 13th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett, the January 13th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we move on to appointments and presentations. Our our council calendar update, City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The calendar update is meant to just give you a snapshot of what's coming up at our future workshop and council meetings. On February 10th, we'll have a workshop on the fire station pre-design review. So our consultants who have been working on that with us will go through how it's really kind of the space assignments and how they determined the uses, so that will be very informational for you. And we're also going to Mr. Love and the consultant that worked on the pedestrian safety plan. That's finished, and that will be presented to you as well on February 10th. At the council meeting, we'll have our strategic plan presentation update. That's where Lois and Mike will give you the last year's final quarter on where we're at with the strategic plan. On February 24th, at the workshop, we'll hear about we'll get an update from staff on the rental housing staffing and implementation, where that's at. And at the council meeting, we have a couple of presentations. The first one will be from Ramsey County Youth Works, and talk about a program that they have at the county that I think the council should hear about. And then we'll hear from the St. Paul Area Realtors Association, SPAR. They're going to talk about housing in the immediate area. And so some of you might remember that Mayor Abrams and Mr. Thompson spoke as part of the SPAR group with our neighboring cities of Oakdale and North St. Paul back a couple of months ago. And that was a really good, informative presentation that was sponsored by the same group. So they're trying to be more proactive and reach out to us, and I think that'll be nice to have them in too. Other than that, the T21, we did have Mr. Beatty talk about that at our last council meeting, and the federal legislation that's happened regarding the age of tobacco products, the sale to being raised to 21. The council had talked about following up after the next state legislative session to see if they make any amendments to state law to mirror the federal law. And then we'll bring that back to see if the council wants to make some ordinance changes. If the state passes a law, we probably don't have to, but we'll look at that in the next couple months, see where we're at with that. The pedestrian safety plan, as I mentioned, will be presented to you at our next council meeting on the 10th, or workshop, I should say. Local option sales tax and construction sales tax exemption legislation. We do have a resolution this evening on the council agenda to support the construction sales tax exemption legislation, and that is to allow us not to have sales tax put on us for the construction of our new fire station. And our estimates of that'll save us anywhere from $350,000 to $500,000 by getting that legislation. So it's definitely worth the effort of staff and our legislative team to try to get that through. The local sales tax option, we are not pursuing that this legislative session. Then finally, the review the appointment process and boards and commissions. Council discussed that on January 13th, and staff will be incorporating those recommendations into our appointment review process as we move forward.
Thank you for that. City Manager Coleman, since we just, before we went live with our council meeting, we had a meeting with HEDSI, our Housing and Economic Development Commission, and also our EDA, which is the council. And our very last discussion was about housing in Maplewood and what we could do in terms of making sure that we have revitalized housing. Mr. Thompson talked about, do you want to tell us the percentages again about, I'm sure, do you still have that paper with you?
I think it's on the top of my head still.
Okay, the percentages in terms of our population, because, our not our population, but our, the age of our housing.
Sure, Mayor. So yeah, our comp plan did a housing analysis, and one of the findings in that was that 2/3 of our housing stock is over 30 years old, and 1/3 of our housing stock is over 50 years old.
So in terms of updates and upgrades and new energy-efficient furnaces and windows and those kinds of things, is that something that SPAR could talk about in light of the fact that our housing, you know, we're not a new community. And so if we could hear some perspective on the realtors, because what we talked about with HEDSI and EDA was a variety of different programs that may be out there that we could be assisting our residents with if they are interested in working on their homes, that we might be a resource for that, and some type of funding, some type of grants. We just literally talked about it 30 minutes ago. And so if the realtors could at least address, you know, we do have an aging, our housing stock is aging, all of our homes are. And so what we can do and what impact that has, I think that might be valuable information for the EDA and for HEDSI as well.
Can I respond to that? We'll certainly ask them their thoughts on how those programs work and what they know about them. If you'll remember at our gathering with the other two cities about a month ago, it was actually somebody from Ramsey County who talked about some of their programs that are available. And so I can certainly reach out to the person from SPAR and see what they do know. And if they don't have a real deep sense of how all the programs work, we could certainly have that discussion with the county officials at some point too.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, is there anything else anyone wanted to add to council comments? Moving on, Councilmember Juniman, recycling the holidays.
Yes, last chance. The 2 large buckets are still right outside the front door. The end of this week is the deadline. If you have any holiday lights that don't work anymore and you're still hanging on to them, they can go right in one of those buckets out there to be recycled. We are very fortunate to have that come to our door. And I think those large buckets have been emptied at least 3 times. So there've been a lot of burned out lights in the city.
Do you know, I had a question whether or not we also recycled extension cords.
Yes.
Because some cities do.
Yes.
So it also includes extension cords.
Cords.
If you have old extension cords you're not using,
Right.
those can be taken apart and recycled as
Yep.
well.
Thank you, Mayor.
very much for bringing that up.
Thank you, Mayor.
Our 2019 Community Development Department Annual Report. I understand that Mr. Thompson is going to do a brief introduction, and then we have the chairs of our commissions that are going to present as well.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So over the past several years, the Community Development Department has kind of put together a comprehensive annual report to reflect all of the work that's happened within the department in the past year. So we provided these in your packet tonight for the members of the public. We also provided some in the back of the room. The report generally reflects all of the work that community development is doing. All the members of the department kind of contribute to compiling everything that's happened. And thanks to Michael Martin in our department, who does kind of the editing and the layout of the actual annual report itself. Something that one of the unique characteristics of community development is that there are 4 boards and commissions that we support and do a lot of the work are in the department. And so we've asked the chairs of those 4 boards and commissions to come tonight, also just to present their annual report for the work of those 4 departments in 2019. So with that, I don't know if there's a particular order, but we could go by the order in the report of the Community Design Review Board. Chair Bill Kempe is here today.
Mr. Kempe, would you please join us?
Hey, thank you.
Welcome.
Well, 2019, we've had a full membership in our board, and we've mostly had a quorum for all of our meetings. I think we maybe had one meeting we had to cancel because of a lack of quorum, but this isn't too bad. And this past year, we had 20 projects that we reviewed, and we've including some multiple new buildings, as like a medical office and senior housing sectors that have continued to expand in Maplewood. We've approved Sherman Associates' third and final phase of the Frost English redevelopment project, which will be multi-tenant retail building. We reviewed projects for ISD 622 and ISD 623, as both districts are improving and modernizing its educational facilities in Maplewood, including remodeling or actually, quite a bit of work on Carver Elementary School. We have approved just under 90,000 square feet of new commercial institutional building space, and 153 new housing units. And that's about all I got to say.
That's a very impressive report. Thank you for all of your work this year. Council members, any questions for Mr. Kempe?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Environmental and Natural Resources Commission. Mr. Redmond, would you like to join us? Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for letting me be here. I'm going to go through my report backwards. I'm an architect, that's how we do stuff. So I like starting off with the goals for the year, just sort of highlighting the goals for 2019. Started off with energy as a goal, which comes out directly out of our our comprehensive plan, which has 2 primary energy and climate goals. One which is climate adaptation, and the other is climate mitigation or climate action, which is reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. We also had primary goal of accessibility to local foods and local transit and trails, and broader sustainability goals. So our actions that we had throughout the year, highlight of it, we reviewed a number of environmental variances and permits, like watershed variances. Review of the Maplewood Community Food Assessment and implementation considerations for next step for food access. Reviewed annual trash and recycling reports and the trends that are happening in those reports year over year. And related to that, we issued, reviewed, and made recommendations for new trash and recycling RFP and contract. And the new contract that came out of that is yet the next level of progressiveness in terms of trash contracting. We're moving a little bit closer to what is known as a pay-as-you-throw. So we're trying to incentivize throwing less by making you pay a little less with smaller amounts. So we're moving closer to that. We also reviewed Maplewood Organics drop-off site, and we also had a food waste recycling experiment. And we're looking then at exploring options for future curbside collection and what might that look like so we can get organics into our community. Reviewed and created recommendations for new environmental purchasing policy, completed and distributed solar site assessments and information about solar benefits and how to get it to the top 50 solar potential sites in this city. These are private sites, so we created information and provided it to those business owners. And we began the climate adaptation plan, which will continue now into 2020. So that's the first half of our climate and energy goals. So in 2020, I also would hope that we can start to put a framework around how we can do the other half, which is mitigation, or the climate action plan, mitigating and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And in that, actually related to the topic that you just brought up, Mayor, strategies about how we can help residents and businesses capture greater energy efficiency and renewable energy would be a part of that kind of planning effort. So hopefully I'd like to see our city start to frame that for moving forward into this year or next year. And then lastly, the commission engaged the community in a number of events, including the spring cleanup, Arbor Day event, Waterfest. We were at the Minnesota State Fair Eco Experience, which was super. It was a lot of fun. National Night Out. We also did a community solar power hour for the second year in a row in association with a group purchase campaign. The Nature Center 40th anniversary, and we also attended the 4th of July celebration. And in a couple of those events, we were capturing information input for the community adaptation plan, climate adaptation plan. So that was 2019, and we're looking forward to 2020.
Thank you very much, Mr. Redmond. Any questions from the council?
Thank you for the good report, and if anybody ever wondered, why do we need them, now we know.
Thank you for all the work that you do on this.
Thank you very much. And I would like to also point out that the committee is a joy to be in, but Sean Finwall in particular is just an amazing employee, and I like to plug that every chance I get. We are very lucky to have her.
Thanks.
She does a lot of great work, so
Thanks.
I'd just like you to know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have our Housing and Economic Development Commission, Mark Jenkins.
Thank you, council and staff. First of all, 2019, not much to talk about, so no. When you've got housing and economic development in Maplewood, and my compliments to the council and staff, this has been a very engaging year for our commission. I've been fortunate enough to be a member of it for 10 years, and I haven't spent so much time with the EDA in those prior 9 years than I have this year. So thank you for the council and the staff's faith in our commission and what we do, and our wise counsel to the council. 2019, we began the year with the State of the City of 2019 and recognized several of our local businesses, including the Doghouse, Union Cemetery, and Venberg Title. Thinking back about a week or so, we also recognized this year, you'll get this in next year's report, Strauss Skate and Cycle, and I cannot remember the environmental firm, Mr. Thompson?
Pale Blue Dot.
Thank you. As you know, businesses that are huge assets to our community for many reasons. 2019, we leaned more into our title of housing and economic development than we probably have in years past. We talked a lot in our commission and advised pretty strongly that council look into, which had already started, the rental housing and licensing. And the council has done just that and is moving forward with the incorporating the International Property Maintenance Code, and we talked about that code specifically quite a bit in our meetings. We continue to visit and engage with our business community through our business engagement and retention program. And again, year after year, I will continue to thank you for that. That's an important service that we do for our businesses, and important feedback that those businesses give to us to help us guide the city. And then last fall, we began working with the council, as I said at the very beginning, in depth on the Economic Development Authority, and handing those powers over to the EDA, the HRA powers, and working very closely on tours of developments around the Twin Cities, multiple meetings, joint meetings here in this space to talk about how Maplewood can be prepared for the future, where we can be proactive and where we can be prepared for those things, those market forces we can't be prepared for, and having those strategy meetings. So thank you again for engaging with our committee on that, and it's been a joy to work with you guys, and look forward to great things to come from our work together, the EDA, and we'll keep on you for 2020 and come back and tell you more in a year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for a great report. Council members, any questions? Mr. Arbuckle, you're next. Planning Commission.
Good evening, Mayor, council, staff, janitors, RV guys, AV guys. I've been in the carnival the last week, so we have to introduce everybody in the room by the time we're done by the evening, so. I always feel when I get up there, I'm 10 times more nervous than I am behind there. I feel like I'm testifying for a murder case or something that hinges on that, you know? So.
I'll get on the news, yeah.
We spent much of the 2019 guiding and reviewing the developments of the North End Vision Plans, which set the course for developing over the next 20 years in the neighborhood. We also worked on the 2040 Comp Plan update, which is a living document which continues to change. We reviewed 3 variance requests, all 3 related to small housing projects. The conditional use permits requested were a major part or driving in our workloads in 2019. Notable projects were Carver Elementary, Maplewood Moose Lodge, and Elm Senior Care Housing. We also reviewed land requests. All members of the Planning Commission looked at incorporating feedback that we received from the neighbors, and that always went well. We gave everybody time to be able to speak and say their piece and tried to make things better and work that we did have understanding what they had going on. And along with the city's expectations of high-quality development projects to make decisions guiding development occurring in Maplewood. I do appreciate the honor to be able to be the chairman for that too. It's been a lot of fun. And I also am going to speak a little bit on the North End too. I was able to be on that too. And I enjoyed very much working on the North End Committee to try to come up with new ideas in future developments guiding around the area of the Maplewood Mall. It's amazing how many different ideas each of us would have, but we're some similar in ideas that we would like to build a new hotel, straighter streets, additional trails, sidewalks, and green spaces, removing some of the parking around the mall. And then I came up with different S words here. I've always kind of had connections with things that kind of run in words, and so I came up with these S words: to spend more money, sleep, hotels, longer stays, sick remedies, spectacular scenery, special activities or events, super visitors like musicians or famous people, sustainability economy, good salaries, wages, good schools, and a giant sandbox.
I don't remember the sandbox as being part, I remember green space, but I don't remember the sandbox as being part
That's
of
me.
the
I love
North End Vision.
sandboxes.
Okay, that was an S though.
Yes,
Got it.
yes. And then safety, services, sociability, and the stakeholders. And then the big S is St. John's. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council members, any questions for Mr. Arbuckle?
come on, bring it on.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all 4 chairs of our commissions, Mr. Kempe, Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Arbuckle, and Mr. Redmond. Thank you for all of the work that you do. We truly do value it. It makes our jobs up here on the DS much easier because we know that projects are vetted. And just as a compliment to staff, that it is amazing to see how many wonderful things have happened over this last year and what's coming in this new year. So thank you, staff, for all that, and this is a great report, so thank you.
It is.
All right, moving on. Let's see, we have resolution for commissioner reappointments. City Manager Coleman.
Excuse me, Mayor, don't we have to make a motion to approve the report?
You're right, we do, we should. Thank you. I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the 2019 Community Development Department Annual Report.
Second?
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. Motion to approve the
2019 Community Development.
2019 Community Development Department Annual Report, representing 4 commissions. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we can move on. Thank you for keeping me honest.
It's a little hard to get in the swing after that
It
intense
is.
3-hour meeting we had
I know.
before. It's
Yeah,
kind of,
it's a whole different thing.
yeah.
Shake it off.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
City Manager Coleman.
Thank you. This evening, the council will review a list of commissioners whose terms are going to expire or did expire on December 31st, 2019. The commissioners were asked to fill out an assessment to evaluate their time on the commission and to provide that input to the city council, and that is included in your staff report in the council packet. There were 2 commissioners whose terms expired. One of them is Tushar Desai, who has chosen to seek reappointment, and the other is Bill Kempe, who, for whatever reason, has decided not to reapply to the Planning Commission.
It's Dominion.
I don't think so.
Certain number of years he had to stay.
Well, he is here, so you can have a conversation with him if you'd like. So what we have for your action tonight, council, is the reappointment of Tushar Desai. He's been a member since July of 2002. So I actually remember when we interviewed him and got him on, and he's been a wonderful asset to the Planning Commission. So your resolution is to appoint him to a 3-year term that will expire December 31st of 2022.
I have to say, Mr. Kempe, you have some very big shoes that will be difficult to fill on the Planning Commission. And I would almost be inclined to not
Say no.
allow that to happen, but, I mean, we certainly recognize that you want to move on, but we certainly will formally recognize your service. You've done a really nice job, and, when I was first on the Planning Commission, I remember going to a meeting, and Bill was talking about going out to one of the sites that was being reviewed by the Planning Commission, and it was so nice to see that he was so dedicated that he wanted to go see it for himself so that he could then comment on it. So you have done an amazing job. Your service will be lost, but thank you very much for the time that you've spent on the Planning Commission. So council members, with that, do I have a motion to approve the attached resolution for commission reappointment?
So moved.
Moved by Neblett, seconded by Juniman. The motion to the resolution for commission reappointments as included in our packet. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Moving on to the consent agenda. Councilmember Juniman. Is there something that you wanted to?
Highlight?
There's a donation, number 3.
Number 3, and
I circled
also-
it, assumed that you would want to.
And also number 6, please.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Council members, G3 has been updated, and a new updated resolution has been placed up on
Yeah,
the
do you want me
DS.
to comment on that real quick? Would you like me to comment on the
Sure,
change
would
real
you
quick?
please?
Sure. Mayor, members of the council, in front of you was an amended report or resolution. This was at the request of our city attorney. He asked that we specify the language a little differently. So in the staff report, that's actually the first sentence has been changed to add that the donations totaling $1,200 is for the Nature Center Explorers Fund. Specify where the money will be used.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And we also thank the people, specific, there are 7
Yes.
individuals.
Councilmember Juniman, you were highlighting number 3. Did you want to say something
Oh,
about that?
there are 7 individuals who contributed this money, so we thank them. And it's basically going to be an ongoing thing to help the Nature Center.
And we certainly appreciate it.
We do.
And number 6, whose is that? That is Mr. Thompson.
Mayor and council, so there's been a working group of cities in the metropolitan area that have been getting together to talk about some amendments at the legislature to allow cities to potentially adopt what we call an enhanced energy code. And so the resolution before you tonight is just to recognize that there is some legislation that is anticipated to move through the legislature this session. And that would enable cities to adopt an alternative energy code, which would, the goal of which could be to reduce some carbon emissions around buildings and facilities. So like I mentioned, this is just a resolution of support. Did want to highlight that it is referencing just the alternative for cities to do this. Should the legislation pass, there would be a total separate process on whether the city does adopt those additional energy code standards, but this would just give us that tool in our toolbox moving forward.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, I'd just like to comment that I think this is a really good thing, and who better than the city of Maplewood, who we're environmentally out there in front, to let the state know we expect this is what's going to happen. And it might be of interest for people to know that outside of transportation, cars, trucks, and so on, building energy is the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a lot to be done. So higher expectations are good. We, of course, will follow right along because that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, and do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda items G1 through 8.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. Motion to approve the consent agenda, items G1 through G8. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have no public hearings tonight, no unfinished business. We go on to new business. The first thing is the resolution seeking approval for the sales tax exemption. We talked just a little bit about that. Mr. Sable, our Assistant City Manager, you are going to give the staff report?
Yes. Mayor and council members, Mike Sable, Assistant City Manager, HR Director. Briefly, the City Manager touched on this earlier, but this is an opportunity for us to pursue a legislative change which would give us a sales tax exemption for materials, supplies, and equipment for the new fire station under construction. Several cities in the last several years have done this, including Minnetonka, Inver Grove Heights, Monticello. I know Dakota County has used this. This is a really creative opportunity for us to save significant portions of money. I think the City Manager referenced $350,000 to $500,000, and those are conservative estimates. We think it might be just a hair higher, depending on how big the building is, of course. But really an exciting opportunity. We already have sponsors in the Minnesota Senate, and we will be securing sponsors in the House later this week.
Great. Any further, any questions for Mr. Sable?
Thank you.
I move approval of the resolution seeking legislation for sales tax exemption for Maplewood North Fire Station construction.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. The motion to approve the resolution seeking legislation for sales tax exemption for Maplewood North Fire Station construction. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have the electrical inspection services. And that,
One more time.
Agreement.
who is taking that one?
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson,
Mr.
you
Thompson showed
again.
it.
Yeah, thank you. Mayor and council, as the council is aware, one of the services that community development provides is comprehensive permits and inspections in the community. So that kind of positions Maplewood to be a one-stop shop for all permits. And so that includes plumbing, mechanical, building, and also electrical permits. What's unique is that because electrical inspections has a very specialized skill set and we don't have the capacity for a full-time inspector, we've always contracted for the actual inspection services rather than providing those services in-house. Since 1995, that's been provided by Summit Inspections and Jim Mantiful, and he gave us notice at the end of last year that he will be retiring and ending his contract with the city at the end of January. So when we received that notice, we went out for an RFQ process, notified a number of contractors and companies in the metro area that were familiar that provide this service. We did receive one response from Tokley Inspections. And so we have interviewed Mr. Tokley, who is also here this evening, reviewed his proposal, and do think that he will provide good services for the city and continuing under the model that we've had of a contracted electrical inspection. So in your packet tonight, there are a couple of items. One, there is a new contract. So the city attorney has drafted a new contract to reflect the scope of work for Tokley Inspections. And the second piece is in Tokley's proposal to us, they have a different fee structure than what we have used under our past contract. We have in the past adopted the state's fee schedule, And in conversations with Tokley Inspections, we actually met with the state as well. Those fees haven't been updated in 14 years, and they're not benchmarked on like a lot of permits are on the value. So those are flat rates. And so the rates that are being proposed by Tokley are consistent with what we are seeing in other communities in the marketplace. So based on that increase in fees for electrical permits, we've also provided an ordinance for you to amend the city's fee schedule to reflect those new fees for electrical permits. Ultimately, the cost of the contract is paid for by the permit revenue that we generate. So the cost share is the city retains 20% of all electrical permit fees, and the 80% of the permit fees are then paid to the contractor for the actual inspections in the community. So there are a couple things we've also talked to them about, some customer service enhancements we'll get. They do offer online inspection scheduling, which will be new for residents and contractors in Maplewood. They also have some more staff members and an office staff that they're available to answer questions throughout the day. So we think it's a good arrangement and a good contractor for the city, and we are recommending approval, and we're requesting 3 actions tonight: approval of the contract, approval of the ordinance, and then a motion to approve the publication of the ordinance by title and summary. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. It's 14 years. It's probably time for us to revisit our fee structure.
Well, it's the state,
Mr. Tokley, you're here tonight. Would you like to say anything to the council?
No, but I certainly will. If you have any
I don't mean to
questions.
put you on the spot.
No, I'm prepared to answer questions, whatever they might be.
Do you want, is there anything that you want us to know about you?
Well, yes, I'll explain. Jeff's pretty well said everything, but I have an office manager, which is unusual. Most of the contract inspectors are kind of one-man shops, so they take the calls in the morning, they set up the schedule, they go do the work, then they get all the results and put them back in their computer. Well, I have Christina Hunt of Northern Office Management taking the calls and monitoring my website. So I would say 70 to 80% of the scheduling is done on my website because people can do it 24/7, and they seem to be very happy with it because otherwise for most contract inspectors it's an hour and a half time in the morning, and that's the only time they can do that. So they can do that hour and a half time, or they can do it online, so that helps. And then Christina's there interacting with the staff within the city throughout the day. When a permit is done and finalized, she PDFs it over to the city. She also keeps it in the cloud, so we have copies of that. So if someone wants to know if a job is done, they can call us, or they can call the city, but we're certainly willing to be called instead. But then they have 2 options there as well. I have 1 full-time inspector, 1 half-time inspector, and I'll probably hire another one, but there's no rush to do that.
Thank you. I was very happy to see that you do the online scheduling, because I think that'll be a real convenience for people doing business in the city of Maplewood to be able to schedule those kinds of things online.
And when they do that, they get an email back confirming that it was done, and they get a confirmation number.
That's great.
So they know that they didn't make a mistake as well.
Thank you. Council members, any questions for Mr. Tokley or for Mr. Thompson?
Very good.
Do I
Very
have
good.
a motion?
I move approval of the agreement with Tokley Inspections Incorporated.
Is there a second? Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. The motion to approve the electrical inspections agreement with Tokley Inspections. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Mr. Tokley. I hope we have a long relationship with you and a successful relationship.
I move ordinance amending the 2020 fee schedule for electrical inspections.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. Motion to adopt the ordinance amending the 2020 fee schedule for electrical permit fees effective February 1st, 2020. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Last one?
I move the resolution authorizing publication of this ordinance by title and summary.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. The motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication by title and summary. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. And with that, we have no award of bids, and we are ready to adjourn. It 7:47. Wow. Very efficient tonight.